Germany in the 1960s. After the war had ended, the country had gone through a process of rapid rebuilding and economic growth. And throughout the decade, the unemployment rate is around only 1 to 2%. Raising one's own standard of living by home improvement becomes a trend among the post-war middle class. The term Heimwerker, meaning as much as home crafter, is used in this context. As a reaction, some tool manufacturers came up with a simple idea: a workshop in every home. In the case of the German company METABO, this workshop came in a wooden box. In that box, a convertible machine transforming into whatever tool you need. And it's all powered by a single METABO brand power drill. From obvious tools like circular saw, sander and jigsaw, over table saw, drill press, table sander, lathe, planer, Dremel, router, milling machine and grinder, to other choices like angled power drill, saw blade, sharpener, and even lawnmower. This yellow book does not only cover all the add-ons, but also a chapter about how to use and maintain all the tools. It also came with this schematic of a METABO power drill, listing all parts and giving a parts list with prices to order replacements. Maintenance and repair of the tools by the operators were encouraged. What a different mindset from how we live today. We live in a world where decades of marketing and job over-specialization, as well as an obsession with erasing any discomfort from life, have dumbed down the idea of what an average person is actually capable of, beyond all recognition, frankly. And it is upon us to return to this ideal and not be a mindless consumer. So, how about we get our hands on the real thing then, and see firsthand what is left of this concept after almost 60 years, and if it is any good. I've been able to score this original box with some of the basic equipment for less than €3 on eBay. Now, normally these tool sets are sold for way more, but this kind of thing happens sometimes when people put something up for auction yet don't offer shipping. But since this set came just with the most basic attachments, I bought a second loose assortment of parts for $35. None of the two sets came with an actual METABO power drill though. But as luck would have it, I found this METABO power drill on one of my scrapyard tours. It has since become an important and reliable tool here in the shop. It's not a 1960s model, but I think it's probably from the 70s. And after removing the chuck, it fits very well with the old METABO system. The two sets combined make for a sizable collection, but many of the parts are rusty and dirty, and paint is coming off in places. The box also has clear signs of aging. Therefore, I will now first restore these parts before we'll start to actually use them. And we will do that. Just you wait. This is called Grundgerät C, which means as much as Platform C or Basic Device C. At the moment it is still configured as a lathe, but we have to disassemble it to clean it. After removing tool rest and center, this cast iron block here is unscrewed. We slide it off the guide rod, and we also remove this part here that I will refer to as the drill holder from now on. I apply WD-40 to the surfaces and remove dirt with a rag. Steel wool is used to get rid of the rust on the guide rod. The smaller parts are quite dirty, and I put them into the ultrasonic cleaner. The drill holder is cleaned as well. And here you can see that even though this tool set was made for home users, not professionals, it does have some really high quality parts. A machine cast iron block with brass screws. After reassembling the first of the two platforms, it shines in new splendor. Upon comparing the details with these two units, we can see that the tool rest on the second model was made from cast iron, while that on the first unit is an aluminium part. Apparently, there have been several versions or updates of this tool back in the day. The second unit receives the same treatment. and we can proceed to the other parts. These are the tables used for example the table saw configuration, and as you can see they have a mechanism for angle adjustments. One of the two tables has a lot of damaged paint and rust on the top surface, while the second one has only minor rust issues. I decided to just remove all the paint from the surface of the heavily damaged unit. It will work just fine without the paint as long as it's stored in a dry place, but I will paint it once I have decided what paint to use. This is one of the saw guards, and again I just use some steel wool to remove rust where I find it. The plating on the circular saw attachment has corroded, but this should not have much of an effect on its performance. These are the angle cutting guides for the table saw. Someone has attached a piece of wood to it to prolong it. And I kept on going with the rust removal until all the parts were in acceptable condition again. Next to the METABO parts you can see the AEG circular saw attachment I found on a scrapyard recently, and a Bosch brand attachment that was sent to me by a viewer. As you can see, other manufacturers offered similar products. But in this case, these parts were made 20 years after the METABO Multitool. The old box has darkened significantly and is pretty dirty. We blow out the dust inside with a blowgun. The old handles, though once apparently brass plated, are heavily corroded. This box must have been stored in a damp basement. The old stickers on the outside are just coming off. I will see that I scan them and print new transparent stickers once I have found the right material for that. And after taking off all the metal parts, the box is sanded off. And then oiled all over. The little handles and hooks are sandblasted and reattached to the box. But the old box is not big enough to hold the two sets that I have bought. And that's why we will now build a second one, inspired by the one in this picture here, which was obviously supposed to hold a set of tools much larger than just the basic equipment found in the smaller box. And guess what? We're going to build that box using the Multitool. Center and tool rest are detached. The power drill is fastened, but we can see that the saw blade is tumbling back and forth. This is not because it's bent, but because it is used in a mode called Wankelnut, meaning tumble groove. The blade is tumbling in order to cut a groove much wider than the actual thickness of the blade. But we straighten that out and install it on the power drill, and the guard is fastened around it. The table is mounted on top and also fastened with those little brass screws. And this is where the guide belongs. These little clamps here are actually supposed to hold the platform down on the workbench, but in this case the workbench surface is just too thick for them. With cutting the bigger panels, the small table is pushed to its limits, of course, and a lot of work goes into just balancing the panel with your hands. But the almost 60-year-old saw blade is actually doing a good job, and at least for this kind of plywood, the power drill has more than enough power. The saw guard is too wobbly and needs to be fastened much tighter, it seems. But at the end of the day, I managed to make all the cuts we need for our new box. In the next step, I need to pre-drill lots of holes into the panels because a number of brass screws will be used to hold the box together. After reattaching the chuck, the table is set to a 90-degree angle and the entire platform is put into an upright position. Now, this is where the clamps would belong. This lever and spring mechanism is fastened to the guide rail by tightening a bolt. A simple mechanism that maybe some of you would want to copy for a DIY drill press. This part can be used to limit the drilling depth. The box will be held together by both glue and little brass screws for which I drilled those holes. This is the panel that the two front doors will be made from. Hinges are screwed to the box, and now the final cut for those two doors is made. I have now converted the platform back to the table saw mode, but this time with another saw blade, and I use it to cut this aluminium strip. Next, the sander attachment is installed onto the power drill, and the surface of the box is sanded off before being oiled all over. These small pieces of wood here are now installed inside the box. They are intended to help with holding the various attachments in place. For that, I also make some more aluminium parts. I have now brought this new box into my apartment, where I'm hanging it on my wall, should I ever want to build some furniture there. Basically turning me into this guy here. So we've seen the table saw for both wood and metal, have used the drill press, and also the sander. But what about the lathe? I first tried with a soft piece of spruce. I used some of the chisels from the last episode to turn it into a roughly cylindrical shape. Before I start to get really artsy. But what about a larger piece made from much tougher wood? This time I use an over 100-year-old chisel that I restored in my last video to again roughen the workpiece into a cylindrical shape. And I do my best to cut some beautiful shapes into it using some of the carving tools I found here in the workshop. So, of course, a tool like this is no replacement for any of the tools in a professional woodworking shop. But considering the fact that they are more than 50 years old, they hold up pretty well, and it is possible to realize projects with these tools, taking up only minimal space in your apartment or home shop. So I for one like this idea, and you can be certain that these tools will reappear in future episodes. So if you liked this little video, please give it a like and show me that you want to see more restoration and repair videos in the future. I'm already working on the next Scrapyard Repair-A-Thon, and I'm looking forward to see you again soon. And if you want to support this channel actively, visit my Patreon page and become a supporter.